disruption or outbursts of any kind, please silence any mobile devices that may sound off during these proceedings. And when speaking before the commissions, if you care to, do state your name for the record. I'd like to take the roll for the Planning Commission. Commission President Wu.
Here.
Commission Vice President Fong.
Here.
Commissioner Antonini.
Present.
Commissioner Moore.
Here.
And Commissioner Richards.
Here.
We do expect Commissioner Johnson to arrive at some point.
And I'll take the roll for the Health Commission. Commissioner Chow.
Present.
Commissioner Pading. Present. Commissioner Sanchez. Commissioner Taylor-McGee.
Present.
And Commissioner Chung.
Present.
Thank you, Commissioners. You have one item on your special calendar for case number 2012.0403W, the California Pacific Medical Center Annual Compliance Statement. This is a joint informational hearing.
Thank you, and good morning, Presidents Chow and Wu, and welcome, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Waddy, Assistant Director of Current Planning. Today's presentation is an informational presentation on California Pacific Medical Center's compliance with their development agreement for the 2013 reporting period. This is their first reporting period. At today's presentation, you will hear from City staff on CPMC's compliance with key components of the DA that are relevant for the 2013 reporting period, as well as some updates on their projected compliance in 2014. Following this hearing, the Directors of Planning and Public Health will determine whether CPMC is compliant with their 2013 obligations and will issue findings to that effect. A third-party monitor will review the Director's findings and will inform the Board of Supervisors whether he agrees with the Director's determinations. As you recall, CPMC's development agreement is to build 2 new hospitals and 3 new medical office buildings, was signed by the mayor in July 2013. Since then, construction for both the Cathedral Hill and St. Luke's hospitals has begun. It's worth noting here that CPMC is on track for meeting their commitment to open St. Luke's Hospital within 2 years of opening the Cathedral Hill Hospital. For the 2013 reporting period, there are 11 main action items up for compliance review, as outlined on this slide. My colleagues will go into many of these in greater detail. And in 2013, CPMC was required to make 12 payments, all of which they have paid. With that, I will now turn it over to Casey Noel of OEWD. Thank you.
Casey Noel, OEWD staff. OEWD and San Francisco Foundation received the first 2 of 3 payments for workforce training and improving entry-level employment for residents in high-priority neighborhoods. The SF Foundation received the first 2 of 6 payments to create the Innovation Fund, which made grants to 5 community-based healthcare organizations. OEWD, the Recreation and Parks Department, PUC, and SFMTA received payments for pedestrian and traffic safety improvements in the Tenderloin, DuBose Park, and around the CPMC Cathedral Hill, Pacific, and California campuses. The Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development received payments into the Citywide Affordable Housing Fund for replacement housing and rental assistance. SFMTA received payments for transportation improvements, including bicycle safety and the Van Ness BRT.
Rhonda Simmons, Director of Workforce, OEWD. So we had 2 parts to our role in this DDA. The first one was hiring around construction. And you can see the goals, at least 50% of new entry-level positions. We've met that goal with CPMC. We've actually done quite well there. And then the other one was on administrative and engineering internships. CPMC contractors filled 4 of 6. That's pretty good for us. A couple of the candidates came through our office as internships and were placed there. Very strong candidates, so we've done quite well there. What? I'm getting. And then the next is for our apprentice program, which is how we, with City Bill, work to get a lot of new folks in the pipeline there. At least 50% of the new entry-level union apprenticeships was our goal, and we've met that. We filled all 8 in that apprenticeship role. So when you go out on the site, you visibly can see our City Bill efforts there really paying off. The other thing I'd like to say on the construction side that's been important is that the staffing for the construction to make this happen on CPMC side, on their contractor side, was exceptional, and that's how we've been able to exceed the goals. One of the staff that is working on this project actually used to run our City Bill Academy, and that really helped because they understand our program, understand the students, and that was a good effort. The next on the construction is a minimum of 30% of the trade hours for union journeymen. That was our goal. An apprentice be performed by SF residents. As of today, CPMC contractors reported, you can see the hours. So we've met that goal in terms of San Francisco residents, which was one of the concerns when we got started on the project. You can see the total work hours as of November, and then you could see the apprentice hours on this site. 65% come outside of the city, 35% are within the city in terms of total work hours. And then on the apprentice side, it's a little bit more balanced, 58% outside, 42% inside the city. You can see our breakdown by neighborhood, which was also one of our missions, was to recruit by certain neighborhoods. Potrero, Western Addition, Viz Valley, Ingleside. Bayview's represented pretty well, Mission's represented pretty well, and you can see where the other folks come from. 44% are from other areas in San Francisco. The in-use jobs have been a little bit more challenging. It's taken a lot more work to get it up and running. The intensity of this DDA from a first source perspective is very different and unique from anything we've done. So the goal was to fill at least 40% of the entry-level positions with system referrals, meaning referrals that come through our funded organizations for workforce. And if the 40% is not met, then whatever isn't met gets rolled over into the next year. And you'll see this is where we've struggled, but I do feel like we're making some progress. These were our priority neighborhoods that we were focusing on. Pretty much the same as with construction. And this is where we're at, or this is where we were at as of year one. So CPMC filled 13% of that 40%. You could see the different categories of jobs: housekeeper, security officer, patient registration, food service aid. Of the 6, 5 came from our designated areas. So the deficiency, or what had to roll over, was the 13 entry-level positions get rolled over into the next year. The other part of this was, and we've just got this part going, was CPMC contributed $3 million to a workforce fund. The purpose of the funding was for barrier removal and job training. The funding was to target educational institutions and nonprofits. The San Francisco Foundation has just released the RFP within the last 2 weeks, so that money is just now hitting the streets, and I think that will help us a lot. It's gone out to a wide mailer of nonprofits to compete for those funds to help with barrier removal and any other issues, training, additional training, things that we now know candidates will need to get employed at CPMC. Our initial failings, we've had a number of meetings and discussions with the community group and CPMC, and would like to talk a little bit about where we stumbled and failed coming out of the gate. It took a bit of time to get the entry-level job notices, so we actually knew what type of positions we would be hiring for. So the projections took longer than we all would have liked. The entry-level projections also look different, I think, from when we initially, put this DDA together in terms of the types of jobs. The initial hiring for entry-level jobs is in a per diem format, so it's not like a full-time FTE, 40 hours a week. And then it took some time for us all to understand the hiring system for CPMC. Both CPMC and OEWD also went through our own sort of staffing up for this project coming out of the gate. So I can really speak from the perspective of my staff, where we were extremely short-staffed and needed to get staffing in place to really make this go. That's not to say that we all could do better and need to do better. And you'll see the improvements. We've gone to a daily, more frequent daily submittal of entry-level job notices. We now have a better sense of what the jobs are. We do monthly reporting, weekly meetings, and conference calls with CPMC. CPMC has gone through their own sort of internal staffing up to make this project work or this program work. And for us, a lot of our work is making sure the job seekers are ready. So to that end, we've invested additional resources. We received $1 million in resources separate from the $3 million that we just got out to help our access centers be ready to get clients ready for the positions that are available. So it's taken some time. We've had conversations with the community and understand their concerns. We've had conversations with CPMC and the community to try to get this, to not make the similar mistakes and start this current year off in a better, stronger way, on the NU side particularly. So here's our plan for meeting the hiring goals. I've talked a little bit about it. Put more resources out on the streets for CBOs around things we now know are barriers for people trying to get into these jobs, both on our shop and through SF Foundation. Enhance our healthcare academies now that we have a better sense of what the job projections are. Initially, there was a heavy focus on entry-level healthcare. It turned out that it was much more supportive services, as you could see, security, food service aid. We're just now starting to see the healthcare jobs. We have a hospitality academy that we are bringing into this mix that when we originally got into this, we were more focused on healthcare. There's been a number of system upgrades, both training on CPMC side, training our staff, and then sort of joint training with our community-based organizations. We didn't really have a data system in place, not a strong one to really track this. And then understanding and monitoring the hiring trends a lot better. We also now have a system in place to understand if folks are not, if we make referrals and our candidates are not successful, we have a system in place to understand what is going on. Why didn't they move on to the next step of hiring? And that's huge, because then we can understand what we need to put in place. And then much stronger outreach and support. We've gone to a more regular application training process of our CBO, so they know how to get clients ready to apply. And we now do stronger hiring events in partnership with CPMC. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Colleen Chavla with the Department of Public Health. And this slide, if I could have the overhead, please. This slide is a summary of the 2013 healthcare commitments that were incorporated into the development agreement, and I'll go through each one. First is the baseline charity care commitment. The purpose of this commitment was to ensure that CPMC would maintain their current levels of service when they entered into the development agreement, and that any other health care obligations would come on top of the commitment that CPMC was already giving to the low-income residents of San Francisco. So specifically, it requires that CPMC serve a baseline of 30,445 unduplicated charity care or Medi-Cal patients each year. This ensures, again, that everything else in the DA is in addition to what they were doing at the time they entered into the contract. So for the prorated portion of the development agreement, they were obligated to serve 4,421 unduplicated Medi-Cal or charity care patients, and they exceeded that by serving 5,687. This provision has been verified, their compliance with this provision has been verified by an independent third-party audit. It's one of 3 elements of the development agreement that have independent third-party audit requirements. So this represents care across CPMC's San Francisco campuses. The majority of care to low income is provided at the California Pacific and Davies campuses, which are reported together as one hospital, and St. Luke's reports together separately as a separate hospital in terms of charity care that they provide to the city. So similarly, this requires that the DA requires that community benefit expenditures also be maintained at previous levels, which was $8 million upon entering into the agreement. And the prorated share of this was approximately $1.16 million, and CPMC again exceeded that by providing community benefit in the amount of nearly $1.5 million. Also, the baseline charity care component requires that CPMC maintain their charity care policy so they can be no more restrictive than previously, and they did so, and also continue their financial support to the Bayview Child Health Center. The second large component of the development agreement related to medical care was new Medi-Cal beneficiaries. And first required to ensure that CPMC saw new Medi-Cal beneficiaries was to maintain their contract with the San Francisco Health Plan, which is the primary provider of Medi-Cal managed care insurance. And CPMC did that. As to the new Medi-Cal beneficiaries, they're required to provide hospital care for up to 5,400 Medi-Cal beneficiaries. There's no timeline for them to meet the 5,400 because new beneficiaries accrue as individuals enroll in health insurance. So the timeline by which new beneficiaries come to CPMC is not within their control. But as long as they stay open to receiving new beneficiaries, they remain compliant. And by the end of 2013, they were nearly halfway there by having 2,511 new Medi-Cal beneficiaries. And my understanding from discussions with the health plan is that they have already exceeded the 5,400 new Medi-Cal beneficiaries in 2014. I want to note here that there was a double counting error that I'll describe in more detail later, but it essentially was just a mathematical error, and it does not affect the 5,400 requirement. The double counting was a total, and the 5,400 obligation remains. Also related to new Medi-Cal beneficiaries, 1,500 of the 5,400 would have to come from a partnership with a new Tenderloin-serving medical service organization. And this organization has to be one that is able to do business in Medi-Cal managed care. That means it's able to take on risk, able to do utilization management of their patients, able to track patients, and so on. So it's a business model that goes beyond just providing healthcare services. The intention here, of course, was that with the new Cathedral Hill Hospital, Tenderloin patients being new neighbors, that there should be a commitment to serve low-income Tenderloin patients. Currently, there is no new provider in the Tenderloin that is able to partner with CPMC to do this work, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. Another major component of the development agreement was the Innovation Fund. This is a fund of $8.6 million that's provided to the San Francisco Foundation, administered by the San Francisco Foundation. In 2013, they were obligated to fund $3.5 million of the $8.6, which they did. The funding decisions for the Innovation Fund are made by an Innovation Fund Grant Committee that comprises the San Francisco Foundation, the Department of Public Health, and CPMC staff. In 2013, the Innovation Fund awarded $1.25 million for three primary projects. First is ACA readiness for nonprofit community clinics, and approximately 40% of the funds went to support community clinics and prepare for health reform. The second was for people living with HIV and AIDS, and approximately 35% went to the San Francisco Foundation to support their new clinic in the Castro. And the third area was for the expansion of emergency mental health services. About 25% of the funds went to the Progress Foundation to ensure that their Door Urgent Care Clinic could operate at full capacity 24/7. That's a clinic that is able to divert patients in psychiatric crisis from the hospital if it's an appropriate placement for them. So there were several additional provisions of the development agreement that are listed here. I'll go through them quickly. The first is subacute services. St. Luke's currently has subacute services. These are high-need patients, skilled nursing facility level high-need patients, and those services are expected to be eliminated by the time the new St. Luke's opens. And so the DA requires that CPMC convene a group to work with other hospital partners to look at the need for subacute services in the future. We extended their deadline for providing us with some recommendations to June 2015, and those recommendations will come to the Health Commission. CPMC has already initiated the work with the other hospitals and is on track to come to the Health Commission by June of 2015. Staff integration, the Health Commission asked that CPMC look to integrate the medical staff across all of its campuses so that equal access to care would be provided no matter which campus was serving patients. And the medical staffs integrated at CPMC thus far are emergency medicine, internal medicine hospitalists, radiology, pathology, oncology, neurology, and anesthesia. So they're making progress in that way. It's important to note here that these are independent physician organizations and not entirely under CPMC's control. The Community Benefits Partnership, this is a group of hospitals and the health department and community organizations that partner to improve health in the city, and the DA required their continued participation in this group or its successor. It does have a successor. It's called the San Francisco Health Improvement Partnership, and CPMC is an active partner in that group. There were provisions around Chinese Hospital that they should continue to a relationship with Chinese Hospital in a manner that's generally consistent with its pre-existing relationship prior to the development agreement. And in fact, they are continuing to have a contractual relationship and provide services in a manner that's agreeable to both parties. And finally, culturally, linguistically appropriate services. So the development agreement requires CPMC to comply with national standards on cultural linguistic adequacy of services. And in this area, CPMC submitted policies that it has in place to show that it is compliant with these standards. We went back and asked CPMC for additional information, including the metrics that they gather to assess their own compliance and performance against the standards, which they also provided. So those are the summary of the provisions and their performance on each of the provisions related to healthcare and the development agreement, but there are a few issues that I wanted to highlight for you here. So within the development agreement, I discussed the Tenderloin, 1,500 Tenderloin new Medi-Cal managed care lives, and I said to you that there is no partner available to do business with CPMC right now, and that is true, and through no fault of CPMC's, that there is no partner right now. The Innovation Fund, I also mentioned that money in the Innovation Fund went to support community clinics to enhance their readiness for ACA. And in fact, the funds went to specifically to see if the community clinics could come together and create that partnership to do business with CPMC. 8 clinics came together. They hired an actuary and a consultant to look at the business end of doing business with Medi-Cal managed care. And at the conclusion of that process, they determined that that was not going to be a sustainable business model for them. And so the clinics themselves decided that they could not pursue that route. We are continuing to look at other alternatives, however, for CPMC to meet that obligation. Currently, there is a clinic that's in flux that's located within the Tenderloin that is looking potentially to partner with other providers. One of those providers does do business in the does do business with Medi-Cal managed care, so there's a possibility that a partnership there could provide an avenue for CPMC to meet this 1,500 Tenderloin life obligation. And should that not occur, and that we should know that within a few months, should that not occur, we have other plans in place to explore other partnerships, perhaps with the health department or others, on how that could work. The second issue I want to highlight in the DA is that we have been advised by CPMC that it is possible that they will be short of their $30,445 baseline commitment for serving unduplicated Medi-Cal and charity care patients. When we were first notified, the shortfall was projected to be somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000. And updated figures show that the projected shortfall is expected to be between 1,000 and 1,500. So this is problematic, I think. They have the ability to make it up in a following year. There is a provision called a 2-year rolling average that allows them to use the overage in 1 year to apply to another year. And in fact, they do have an overage in 2013. But I think it's still problematic for the terms of the DA. We are exploring other ways for them to help meet this commitment, perhaps by serving Medi-Cal patients who are waiting at San Francisco General for services, and so it would reduce the wait for San Francisco General's Medi-Cal patients and help CPMC meet their own obligations. So we're exploring ways that we might be able to do that. And then I also mentioned that there was a double counting error on the total Medi-Cal managed care beneficiaries. This, again, does not affect the 5,400 new Medi-Cal lives, nor does it affect the 1,500 Medi-Cal lives. It simply was a mathematical error. We knew that a certain number of people were transitioning into Medi-Cal already, and we didn't want CPMC to be able to use that number. We knew we're transitioning to meet the 5,400, but that number was double counted. It was about $2,500 over. So issues outside of the development agreement. I know that there still remains concerns about the lack of skilled nursing facility beds in the future plans for CPMC. The skilled nursing facility beds were part of an agreement that the Health Commission had with CPMC early on. Those agreements were the foundation of the healthcare elements of the development agreement, but in the negotiations, the skilled nursing facility beds did not make it through to the end. So that was certainly a concern of the commissions, and the commission recently our health commission recently passed a resolution noting that the reduction of skilled nursing facility beds would be detrimental to the city, but it is not an element of the development agreement and not enforceable under the development agreement. And then finally, the St. Luke's Diabetes Clinic. We have received reports that there have been changes to staffing in the diabetes clinic at St. Luke's that are affecting monolingual Spanish-speaking women. And while there isn't a service reduction, CPMC has reported that there's no actual service reduction. The same number of people are being served. We believe that there is concern about the level of cultural competence in the services provided. The transition from bilingual staff to reliance on interpreter services is less than ideal, and so this remains a concern. And while CPMC has policies in place that show that they support the class standards and metrics to measure their performance there, we still have concerns about the actual implementation and how that affects patients. So that concludes my presentation, and Ken will conclude.
Thanks. I'm Ken Rich with OAWD. Thanks for your patience. excuse me, through this detailed presentation. I'm the wrap-up speaker, so we're almost done. I wanted to remind all of you how difficult and complex the process was for arriving at this development agreement. Staff believes that overall, considering the short reporting period covered by this report, that the development agreement's provisions are working relatively well so far, and staff's recommendation to the directors of public health and planning are to find CPMC in compliance for this reporting year. I wanted to highlight just a couple of issues that we've heard concerns from the community and from others. The first one is that, as you heard from Ms. Chavla, CPMC may miss meeting its baseline charity care target for the coming calendar 2014 reporting period. We're glad that the discrepancy is not likely to be a large one, but frankly, we do want to say that we're surprised and disappointed that this key central provision of the development agreement should even be in doubt in any reporting year. There needs to never be any doubt that this provision will be met, and the city will continue to vigorously monitor and enforce this provision of the development agreement. Also, just to highlight on the Tenderloin Medi-Cal patients, it was a central tenet of the development agreement to try to make sure there's a way for CPMC's new facilities to take care of Tenderloin patients. The fact that that hasn't been managed to be put together yet is, as Ms. Chavla said, is not a fault of CPMC. I just wanted to reiterate that the city is committed to continuing to work to make that happen. On the issue of entry-level hiring, as you heard from Ms. Simmons, we're committed on the city side to making this work better in the future. Just to hit briefly a couple of issues which have not been hit in the presentation, but we've heard concern from through letters that were sent to you from the community. Some letters you received alluded to CPMC being out of compliance with a section in the transportation section of the DA, which requires provision of discounted Muni Clipper cards to employees. We do not believe this is correct. We believe that based on reading the development agreement and the TDM plan adopted by the Planning Commission, this requirement kicks in between years 2 and 5 of the agreement. So they are not there yet. We expect that they will, of course, comply when they hit the compliance period. Lastly, there's been some concern expressed about the length of this annual review process. This was an item you may remember that was heavily negotiated at the end of the process of adopting the development agreement in 2013. CPMC's fiscal year ends in December, and they are given in the development agreement 150 days to audit, to audit and report on the information. The city must then meet various timelines to analyze the report, issue its own report, and hold this hearing. We are basically on this schedule now. We'd certainly encourage CPMC to provide the initial report as quickly as possible in future years so we can move this process more quickly, but we recognize that the timeline for doing so under the development agreement is 150 days. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Browner from CPMC to quickly give you his presentation, and then we'll be all done.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm so used to being here late in the day. It's a pleasure to be here early. Are we almost ready? Well, while we're getting the slides up, let me begin by thanking those of you who've been on the Planning and Health Commissions through the many years that it took us to get to this point. If you're anything like the members of our medical staff, hospital staff, or board, you wondered whether someone from CPMC would ever be standing before you talking about compliance with the development agreement, because of course there was concerns about whether we would ever get to the point of having one. And I hope you're as delighted as I am with the progress that we've made, not only with the development agreement, but also, of course, with building 2 new hospitals for the city of San Francisco. So I think we're ready for our first for the slides. Let me just begin. Those of you who haven't driven by the site of the new hospital at Van Ness and Geary should certainly do so. Construction there began slightly over a year ago with digging a very deep 88-foot hole. One of the things we learned is that Cathedral Hill should be renamed Cathedral Sand Dune, since in fact we never did hit rock, even though we're 88 feet down at the deepest point at the corner of Franklin and Post. That structure has actually begun rising out of the ground with concrete. An interesting fact is there's enough concrete in that hospital to pave the Golden Gate Bridge 4 feet deep. So it's going to be quite a project. And we're equally delighted that were underway at the St. Luke's campus, although I would say that some of our doctors who've lost their parking lot are perhaps a little bit crunched. This is a view along Cesar Chavez of the new 120-bed hospital that's going up at St. Luke's. And I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline for both of those hospitals in a minute. You've already heard about the substantial accomplishments that we reached in 2013 and are ongoing in 2014 in terms of honoring our commitments to the city in the development agreement, and we're thankful that we were found in compliance with all elements. I will comment on a few issues. We're delighted that the medical staffs at St. Luke's, which is a separate body, as you heard, and the medical staffs at our Pacific, California, and Davies campuses are well on the way towards integrating most of the critical services. In fact, there are several services, such as critical care, that are not on that list that are also integrated together, and that's important for our ability to continue to provide care for that community. We exceeded by a large amount the construction workforce hiring goals and provided substantial support for training construction workers in San Francisco. And of course, we funded all of our cash commitments to the various departments and agencies and foundations that were included in the development agreement. I mentioned that we're underway. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that this is a development agreement about building two new hospitals. We're well underway. We've had groundbreaking ceremonies at both campuses. Foundation work is underway at Van Ness and Geary, and we're still digging at St. Luke's. But because the St. Luke's project is a slightly shorter project in terms of the construction timeline, and because we've had good response from OSHPD in terms of approving our plans, we believe both hospitals will actually open close to the same time in 2019, as opposed to there being a substantial delay as was allowed or as is allowed in the development agreement. I would caution you that those especially on the Planning Commission understand that things happen. And those of you on the Health Commission understand that OSHPD can sometimes throw wrenches in the way, but right now it looks good to have both hospitals filled with patients in 2019. And you heard the city talk about what's going on with the hiring process with OEWD. This is a brand new process for both us and the city, and there have been some bumps along the way. Our commitment remains strong to hire 40% San Francisco residents for our entry-level jobs. We are absolutely committed to doing that. In fact, we have hired almost 3 times as many San Francisco residents as you heard about into entry-level jobs. They just haven't gone through the process because the process is only really now up and running and fully effective, and we're grateful to the city for committing the resources to help us with that. And here's what these two hospitals are going to look like. Looking from the north towards the Van Ness and Geary Hospital, and actually also looking from the north towards the new hospital at St. Luke's across Cesar Chavez. And I look forward to welcoming all of you to the ribbon-cutting ceremony in 2019. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to open for public comment, but there is a requested block of time from the coalition.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good morning, commissioners and city officials as well as community members. My name is Rachel Ibora. I am here with San Franciscans for Healthcare, Housing, Jobs, and Justice. We are a combination of 3 coalitions that united together several years ago to ensure that corporations such as Sutter CPMC prioritize community needs and benefits San Francisco as much as they benefit from San Franciscans. Combined, we are Coalition for Health Planning San Francisco, Good Neighbor Coalition, and Jobs with Justice. There are members in the audience right now who are members of our coalition, and I asked them to stand up briefly. And as we're getting our presentation ready, I believe ours is on the screen right now. We're here mainly to ensure that we trust and verify. We'd like to trust our city in ensuring that the development agreement ratified in 2013 is fully implemented, and urge that you verify any claims that Sutter CPMC is indeed in compliance. Today we'll focus on 3 key areas. Jobs and transportation, where we have found Sutter CPMC to actually be out of compliance, and healthcare, as you heard earlier in the presentation, where there are improvements that need to be made to ensure compliance. So with that, I'll present to you Jenny.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jenny Lamb. And this morning I'm going to give you an overview around the concerns around the workforce provisions from the development agreement. So the promise. What was the promise to the city? The promise to the city residents of San Francisco with the CPMC project, that there would be a local hire goal of 40% for all entry job level positions. And today, this morning, I'll be speaking specifically about the non-construction jobs, the end-use jobs. And that the local hire goal would be at all campuses, not just the final campus built, and that the hiring goal would begin immediately with the development agreement. As city staff alerted earlier, that the development agreement was focused on 6 underserved areas of San Francisco. And unfortunately, with many of the underserved neighborhoods, there is oftentimes a masking of high unemployment rates. So although San Francisco benefits from a low overall unemployment rate, about 5%, there are stubborn pockets of unemployment in certain neighborhoods, like Chinatown, which is 3 times that amount at about 15+% of unemployment. You've heard from city staff earlier around some of the positions available for the entry jobs. And these entry jobs require no more than a high school GED degree, nor 2 years of experience. CPMC is the 2nd largest private employer in San Francisco. And within a hospital, truly requires a multitude of staff performing many different types of jobs, and similar to the hospitality industry. And given the robust current workforce system in San Francisco, San Franciscans are well positioned to fill these various jobs. So what's the required pathway to achieving the 40% hiring target? The DA lays out a process which defines whether CPMC has made good faith efforts to reach the hiring target. The first step is that CPMC is to follow a special first source hiring process, and that requires CPMC to notify OEWD of every job opening and give candidates a 2-week preferential hiring window, and to ensure that OEWD, also known as the city workforce system, has an opportunity to refer those candidates and given a first shot at those positions. Secondly, CPMC must communicate its projected jobs needs for the year, which will then give the city an upshot at knowing what types of skills are required for those positions and how we can best position our residents to be successful. This ensures that the job training programs are training the people for the kinds of jobs that CPMC is actually hiring for. And lastly, when it falls short of the hiring target, as you heard earlier, CPMC must then look at redesigning its recruitment and referral process. So to give an oversight around the 23 compliance period between August 10th and December 31st, CPMC did not follow this overall process. It did not begin to notify OED of jobs until December 5th of 2013, even though it was under an obligation to do so beginning August 10th. CPMC did not provide job projections until April 8th of 2014, a full 8 months into the DA. And in December 2013, while they began notifying OED of job openings, they didn't hire anyone referred by the city. The Community Coalition is baffled by how the city can consider this 4-month failure to notify the city of any job openings, compounded by the 8-month delay of job projections as compliance. So let's look at the first full year of hiring, and those outcomes were terrible. If we look at the first full hiring year from August 2013 to July 2014, we see the poor hiring performance persisted well beyond 2013. CPMC filled 47 entry-level positions organization-wide. If it had met the 40% hiring target, 19 of these hires would have been city-referred candidates. But CPMC only hired 6 city-referred candidates through this process. And this is completely inconsistent with, again, the promises of the DA. The city report, however, does not in any way reprimand CPMC for this poor outcome, nor does it express any concerns for these results. The problem continues to get worse. The bottom bar chart shows that the data the city used to establish CPMC's compliance, and those numbers we just reviewed are very bad. Again, 6 hires out of 47 job openings, falling short of the 19 it should have hired under this process. But if we compare the performance to number of openings CPMC projected, the numbers, again, get worse. The initial projections by CPMC for its first year was that it would have 114 entry-level openings. And again, the promise of this project and what it means for the city of jobs creation. It has only filled that many positions. The 40% hiring target would have been 46. But it filled less than half of those jobs it projected. And something is going on. There are fewer jobs being filled than we were led to expect. But the city report, again, does not even go into notice of why the CPMC's projections were so far off. And we want and ask the city to be on top of this issue. In closing, the ask is to find CPMC out of compliance with its entry-level operations and hiring obligation. The Community Coalition therefore asks the commissioners to urge the planning director to find that CPMC was out of compliance in 2013 with entry-level operations first source hiring obligation. It's undisputed that CPMC didn't refer a single job opening to the city for the first 4 months of 2013. That it waited 8 months to provide an accounting of its entry-level jobs and protection of anticipated openings. Its hiring outcomes in 2013 and the first full year of hiring were atrocious. And the only fair objective determination that can be made is that it was out of compliance with its obligations. In this first of 10 annual reviews, it's essential that the city establish a strong precedent for thoroughly and fairly reviewing, assessing CPMC is in compliance and where it isn't.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Robert Blomberg. I'm a registered nurse at CPMC Pacific Campus in Pacific Heights. Today I'm going to be speaking about the transit match subsidy for all CPMC employees section of the DA. The promise was that CPMC shall share the cost equally between employer and employee of a monthly FastPass or Clipper card up to the value of an adult FastPass, which I believe right now is $68. This was in subsection 8C. August 10th, 2013 is the effective date of the DA. No alternate start date is identified with this obligation. The purpose is served to encourage employee public transit use at all 4 CPMC campuses. Speaking personally for Pacific Campus, I know that the garage is quite small and employees frequently have a hard time both getting into parking and when I get out at night at 11:30, getting the cars out of the garage So it's a very tight situation for parking a vehicle in there. Also to reduce automobile use, traffic and parking congestion, pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, of course. CPMC Pacific Campus is in a residential neighborhood, and all the people driving into work definitely present traffic issues on those streets. And to reinforce the city's transit-first policy. Performance. CPMC has not yet implemented the subsidy. Myself and other nurses have requested by calling into Sutter Health to get this subsidy. However, it has had zero effect and it is not being offered at this time. The city report states that CPMC does not intend to do so for at least 5 years or until 2018 or 19. Yet the city report finds CPMC in compliance. The city's justification for this, Transportation Demand Management, or TDM plan, dated April 2013, that CPMC was already obligated to implement, states that 50% transit subsidy is a midterm program to begin within 2 to 5 years. However, this was not discussed in prior hearings. The language of the DA is clear. CPMC shall share equally the cost of a monthly FastPass in Section 8C. As part of its normal TDM, marketing, outreach, and publicity activities, CPMC shall promote the use of the subsidy described in Section 8C. No publicizing among workers at the facility at which I work has been done that I have seen or witnessed firsthand. The DA accelerated the start of the TDM's planned transit subsidy to make an immediate obligation and to require CPMC to publicize it. The city seems to have it backwards here. The earlier TDM does not modify the later DA. At a hearing before the Board of Supervisors Land Use Committee in February of this year, a 2 to 5 year delay was never mentioned. In fact, Supervisor Yee even said that the 6 months lost should be added on to the back end of the 10-year requirement, and specifically discussed. It was never discussed that there would be a 2 to 5 year delay. In the city staff presentation dated June 17, 2013, California Pacific Medical Center Hospital rebuild to the Board of Supervisors, Land Use and Economic Development Committee, the development agreement was reviewed. And under the transportation section, CPMC will pay $6.5 million to the SFMTA in lieu of TIDF, and CPMC will pay $5 million to SFMTA for BRT facilities at Van Ness and Gary. These have already been done. However, the stipulation that CPMC will encourage all of its employees to purchase a Clipper card through a variety of outreach means and will share the cost equally with employees has not been done, and we're just wondering why there's an inconsistency between paying the money to the city, and which was immediate, and then delaying the Clipper card to 2 to 5 years. In conclusion, for the Clipper card subsidy obligation, in Section 8, we are looking for the city to find CPMC out of compliance, consistent with its transit-first policy. The city should insist on the strongest and clearest interpretation of the DA that the transit subsidy requirement starts on August 10th of 2013, and not try to justify the slowest, weakest interpretation that it can wait 5 years, rather than starting now, so when the new hospitals are open, employees are already accustomed to utilizing public transit to get to work. CPMC should be found out of compliance and directed to begin the subsidy program immediately with an adjustment to compensate for the 16-month delay. Thank you.
And I'm going to be covering for our healthcare concerns. There's actually 2 main issues that we have. We want to make sure that there's a backup plan to provide hospital and specialty care to Tenderloin residents in the Medi-Cal Managed Care Program. And we also are concerned about the community responsive services being continued to be available at St. Luke's and other CPMC campuses. As you heard earlier from the DPH presentation, there is an obligation for 1,500 Tenderloin patients to be served.
Unfortunately, that's your 15 minutes.
In conclusion, we just want to make sure that the commissioners understand that we find that CPMC Sutter has not been in compliance based on the facts that we have presented to you, especially around jobs, transportation, and healthcare. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. So we'll open it up for public comment. If I call your name, please line up on the screen side of the room so that we don't block the doors. Chuck Flax, Francisco da Costa, Espanola Jackson, Mary Michelucci, and Don Marcos.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Flax, Senior Manager of Healthcare Programs at JVS, or Jewish Vocational Service. We're also the sector lead for the CPMC First Source hiring program with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. So we're partnering with the city on this project. I'm pleased to speak in support of CPMC in acknowledgement of our longstanding partnership with them. Specifically, the human resources leadership at CPMC has long been a strong supporter of JVS. Maynard Jenkins, the regional vice president, is a former JVS board member and is the current co-chair of our healthcare advisory board, helping us to better serve the needs of the regional healthcare employers and job seekers. CPMC and Sutter Health leaders from around the Bay Area have helped JVS to assess how the industry is changing and how their employees' skills and occupational needs must evolve. We know that the dual pressures of a desire to cut costs and still serve a greater number of patients mean that many significant changes are underway, and this has a large impact on jobs. We're also proud to support the Office of Economic and Workforce Development in their implementation of this CPMC development agreement. We continue to work closely with CPMC recruiters to help our participants best prepare themselves for consideration. We found CPMC staff to be very helpful with the JVS goal to employ people through the First Source hiring process. As the plan has been implemented, we've had about 5 of our participants interviewed and 1 hired. We agree, however, with some of the concerns expressed by everyone that the process has been slower than desired and has not rolled out as effectively as everyone expected and hoped. On the other hand, we want to work very closely both with CPMC and the city to facilitate the process and make it successful. We hope and believe that we're all on the same team. Again, CPMC is a good partner, and we want to personally thank Maynard Jenkins, Rebecca Ostrander, and Tony Wagner for their ongoing support of JVS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Francisco da Costa. My expertise comes from running the Presidio, where we had a Letterman Army Medical Center and a Letterman Army Institute of Research. And I've written over 200 articles on hospitals. Some of you all on the Health Commission have heard me speak before. And some of you all on the Planning Commission know me for a long time. Now, before I say anything, please do not think that you can fool all the people all the time. And I'll tell you why. The people who gave you the presentations, be it from the planning department, from the workforce, and from the San Francisco Health Department, spoke in generalities. San Franciscans are astute, but more than being astute, they are very compassionate. This is about compassion. My family has been involved in the health services from the 16th century. I've made this statement before to the health commissioners. So I know a lot about hospitals. When I travel all over the world, I go and visit hospitals. Do you want to know about St. Luke's Hospital and how much it's served the poor people in the southeast sector? And today, what is the state of affairs? You do your own evaluation. As to California Pacific Medical Center and their shenanigans, ploys and machinations, I've been following it deeply, giving $4 million for some child care services on 3rd Street, in one of the most contaminated hotspots in the city. Do not try to fool all the people all the time. I watch y'all on television. If y'all are given any appointment, be it on the Planning Commission or on the Health Commission, please represent. Why? Because I represent the first people of San Francisco, the Muwekma Ohlone. And I want to make a statement, a very clear statement, that Sutter Hospital and how we have done their evaluations, they do not have the blessing of the first people in San Francisco. Thank you very much. And I give you back the 18 seconds that I have here.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I haven't started yet, but this machine is going. Thank you. My name is Dr. Espinola Jackson, and this is the first time of my knowledge knowing that these two commissions have met together. It would be very good if you, the commissioners, would come out into the community which you was doing at one time and meet with the people that live in the community. I brought some information to you because I have a greater concern because of the fact Baby Hunters Point was mentioned. Here's a map that's supposed to be showing an area where homes are to be built in the shipyard. This is a bogus map. I would like to say this. What goes on behind closed doors comes to light. And there's a lot of things going on behind closed doors that is really ridiculous. You know, I hate saying, being a resident of San Francisco since 1943, a city that I love, and I have lived in Baby Hunters Point since 1948. I've been before both of you commissions, not you commissioners. You know, it is sad. I also I was at a meeting last night. Oh, okay, sweetheart. This was never approved. In fact, the map was changed and added to another area, and it is sad. You know, I would like for the Health Commission to do something about Baby Hunters Point. No statistics have been given in the last 15 years of the deaths, how many people have died, all of the cancer. When the police department went out to the shipyard, I begged them not to go because of all the toxicity that was out there. They went and they came down with cancer. You know, you all should be concerned about the citizens of San Francisco, the health of the people, my people. And when I say my people, I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about all of the people that live in the southeast sector of San Francisco. Why don't you look up the reports about the health conditions of that community? No one is doing anything about those health problems that we're having in Baby Hunters Point. I would like to say,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Espinola Jackson. Your time is up.
Okay, I'm going to say this. Don't bring that coroner's office to Baby Hunters Point, because if you do, he's going to be dead in 5 years.
Thank you.
All right? I had to get that one in for you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. As the next speaker comes up, I'll call more names. Miguel Vimes, Mariela Rivera, Justin Ho, Brian Tang, Tina Jagtiani, and Sarah Krolak. If there are additional speakers, you can line up behind the speakers that I've called.
Good morning. My name is Mary Michelucci. I'm a long-time employee of St. Luke's Hospital. I'm a nurse. And I want to address the services that are not offered at St. Luke's anymore. Basically, what we do is for some of the most simplest things. Put a patient in an ambulance, they travel over to CPMC, they have whatever procedure they're going to have done, and they return to us. I have heard from many people that they're actually getting an ambulance bill for their services. I am having trouble understanding what services might be in the new St. Luke's, given that we have none in the old St. Luke's. We've been really thoroughly decimated with the ability to provide basic procedures, which we had done for years, no longer do. I also understand that there is a Hill Physicians Group that has a contract with some of our doctors that if a patient, let's just pick out a child, is seen in that doctor's office, we cannot have an x-ray done at St. Luke's Hospital. They must go over to CPMC to have that x-ray done and then return to their primary care doctor to further evaluate treatment after the x-ray. I have heard this complaint from many of our pediatricians. My concern is along with the previous speaker who identified some sore spots within the care of the confines of St. Luke's Hospital. I do remember being in the previous Board of Supervisors meeting, the last one, where one of the representatives of St. Luke's Hospital, CPMC, did speak about being excited about the new opportunities within the area. Being that we had more high-tech people that were moving in, he felt that that would give a better economic support to St. Luke's Hospital. That being said, my concern is that we may be forgetting some vital pockets of need thoroughly outlined by the previous speaker. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Miguel Baez. I live in San Francisco. I am sorry because I am a little sick today, but I wanted to share my history with you. I applied for a cook position at CPMC in March. I have over 20 years of experience cooking. Mariela, my employment coordinator, found the position for me, and she helped me with the online application. I am going to interview in 3 to 4 days after submitting the application from the Human Resources Department. My first interview was with Tony Warner. I feel good about that interview. The next week, I had a second interview with the chef, kitchen manager, sous chef, and staff. It was about 4 to 5 people who interviewed me and made an appointment. With them the next day to prepare a meal for them in 30 minutes. I was my third interview with the hospital. I always say to work in the kitchen, but scared I didn't know where everything was because I was a new kitchen. So I had to find out where everything was and how the equipment worked. I made 2 different meals, one a cold soup and fish dish. The managing chef tried and told me it was very good and tasty. I left the interview very confident because the chef wanted my recipe. After this interview, they told me they will call me, and I haven't received any response from them since.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mariela, and I am the Employment Service Coordinator at the Communities United for Health and Justice, helping Excelsior residents find jobs. Since June this year, I worked with 6 clients. All of them applied for different positions, either clinical and non-clinical ones, from patient representative, security officers, and cook and nutrition service positions. We together took the time to go to CPMC website and follow the instructions to open an account and apply for the jobs. 3 of them have been calling for the first interview, and one of them actually went for the second and third interview, Miguel. But they did not get any kind of response back from CPMC. They felt very disappointed, and they don't feel confident to apply again to work at CPMC. My client populations come from the Excelsior community. They are Filipinos and Latinos. Their English is good enough, and their resumes show them with the right qualifications to perform the position they were applying for. Actually, the Miguel resume is taken for an example to how to do a resume, to make a resume. I am confident that my clients could do a great job at CPMC, but the process to hire them is difficult and is not transparent. They don't know whether the application is still active or if the OSDA has been formally rejected. I say the same jobs they applied for reposted and do not feel confident to recommend new clients for those jobs. I hope this process is fixed and service providers like me can have all the information we need to recommend successful applicants to these CPMC jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Supervisor Campos here. Want to offer him the opportunity to make comments? Oh, sorry, Mr. Marcos.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Commissioners. It's actually very impressive to see this historic meeting. I know it doesn't happen very often. So thank you to the Planning Commission and to the Health Commission for this meeting. The reason that I'm here is because in my 6 years as a supervisor, this has been one of the most important development agreements and projects that we have worked with. It's something that is very critical and very important to this community and, quite frankly, to the city at large. If you look at the Healthcare Services Master Plan, which actually both of these bodies helped to put together, you know that CPMC and Sutter play a very important role in the healthcare, in addressing the healthcare needs of this city. And I just want to make a couple of points here. One, as you have heard from a number of people and we'll hear from other people, there are some concerns that the community has about the implementation of this development agreement. And the concerns have to do with issues that involve, for instance, the health of neighborhoods like the Tenderloin and the thousands of people that are impacted by what happens there. Issues around job creation and making sure that jobs are created in some of the most vulnerable communities that are struggling in this economy, which was really the intent and the hope of the development agreement. Something as basic as simply helping the workers at these hospitals access public transportation is also something that needs to be addressed. There are issues around healthcare. There are issues around the future of St. Luke's. There are issues around what's happening with the Diabetes Center. There are a number of those issues, and I think it's really important for us to make sure that there is proper implementation of the development agreement, and not only following the letter, but really the spirit of that agreement. The other thing that I would say, and this is why I'm actually very hopeful, is that this project is an example of how something that was for a long time very divisive can actually bring people together. And here we have an example of a project where you had two sides of an issue who were fighting for a very long time being able to resolve a lot of those issues. And I am grateful to the community, and I'm grateful to CPMC and Sutter, and I see Dr. Browner here. And so I am confident and hopeful that we can work together to address some of the concerns that have been raised. And I wanted to be here just simply to say that as the supervisor for District 9 and as someone who was involved in the mediation that got us to this point, I remain committed to helping work with the various parties, to helping work with the community, with CPMC, to figure out how do we address some of the concerns that have been raised. And we are open to doing that in whatever capacity, whatever way is needed, whether it's through, facilitating informal meetings, whether it's, providing a forum at the Board of Supervisors through formal hearings to discuss some of these issues. I'm open to that. And I know that there is an interest on both sides to address these issues and to make sure that we live up to the letter and the spirit of the agreement. And I am confident that we will be able to do that. And obviously, there's a very important role for each one of these two commissions to play in that process. So I look forward to that, and we will be following up with all sides. And I see our Director of Public Health here as well. She has been very useful in also helping to bring people together. So I think that there are issues, but there's also a lot of common ground. And so I'm confident that we'll be able to move forward with everyone's cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Don Marcos, Director of Mission Iron Hall, and some of our staff is here with me. My first child was born at St. Luke's, and she went into 18 hours of labor to bring her into the world. I got some of my first shots at St. Luke's when I was at Edison Elementary. I consider St. Luke's a neighborhood hospital. And just like the Mission Dolores Park is a neighborhood park, Mission High School, Beef Tongue Burrito, neighborhood food, Santana was a neighborhood band. Mission Hiring Hall is a neighborhood employment service provider that's been there for 45 years, and we will celebrate the 45th year next October, and you're all welcome. We have supported this project from day one, publicly, directly, without hesitation, because we know by doing jobs for 45 years, we know how important landmark construction projects like this will bring to the city. And we're always ready to stand before anybody to provide our service and get people jobs. We supported it, and we expect in return, support of CPMC directly and not make us stand in line for it. With that said, however, we anticipate we can help them. If they need to catch up with the placement and referrals, we're ready to do that. And as a matter of fact, we've been doing that with the general contractor, Herrera Bolt, who's hired some of our referrals and hired some of our interns in the program that OEWD funds and administers. So please consider the neighborhood, and again, thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Brian Sang. I'm a volunteer with the Physicians Organizing Committee, and we are very critical of how the city is allowing this development agreement to proceed with all the failings and the compliance clauses that we're seeing. We talk about charity care standards are not being met, and the city is failing to hold Sutter to these standards. They get tens of millions of dollars more each year in tax breaks than they actually provide in care. They made national media last year that they charge 38% higher rates across the board for California. They've abandoned the 100 skilled nursing bed requirement. And we talk about cultural and linguistically appropriate services. They fired 3 out of the 5 workers at the Diabetic Treatment Center, where St. Luke's has a 35% diabetes rate. 3 of those workers, they were the only Spanish-speaking bilingual workers there. They created that program specifically because women with diabetes were having children born with dystocia because They were not able to come out of the womb properly. They needed C-sections, and Sutter has laid these people off. I know from hearing from the nurses and many other people in the community, and certainly from the physicians that we represent, we are calling for the immediate reinstatement of Anna Mayorga and Joan Werner, and it would be Sylvia Ricinos as well, but fortunately she's been able to find another position. We've seen hospital takeover issues and governance issues plaguing Sutter Health up and down the state. At Marin General Hospital, Sutter Coast Hospital, and San Leandro Hospital, our organization has been very vocal about the fact that these guys do not deserve nonprofit status. And if they're going to get it, then at least take all this extra, like $80 million, about the surplus around there in actual care, and provide it in hiring the workers are supposed to provide. Muni cards, that seems like an easy one. But we would like to see this come up to the full board, specifically the Diabetes Treatment Center and other issues around mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Justin Ho, and I'm also a volunteer with the Physicians Organizing Committee. Dr. Christian Tuan is one of our members, and he's also the medical director for the Diabetes Center, but unfortunately he's not able to come today because he's seen patients. But he wrote us the following. As the medical director of the Diabetes Center, I was not given any notification of the decision until after the staff members were already laid off. The concern I share with my colleagues is that the administration did not ask for any input from the doctors who utilized the Diabetes Center before the layoffs were announced. Among the concerns we have are 2 of the 3 staff members let go are Latino and bilingual in Spanish and English. The replacement educators do not speak Spanish, and we now have 0 Latino staff members in the center whose population it serves is predominantly Latino. Diabetes care is extremely nuanced, requiring an understanding of the patient's cultural background, lifestyle, diet, personal life, family involvement, etc. And there will inevitably be shortcomings because of the loss of the Spanish-speaking Latino staff members. Sylvia Racino RN was one of the staff members laid off, and she has worked for 27 years in the center and has been a vital part of what the center does and is a prominent member of the community. Her being laid off without any prior warning makes us call into question the logic and reasoning behind the layoffs. The replacement educators are not specialty certified for the treatment of diabetes, which is endemic in the population served by the Women's Center at St. Luke's Hospital. This puts the unborn child, mother, doctors, and hospital at immediate risk if the patients are not seen in a timely manner and treated appropriately to prevent the complications associated with diabetes. The cited reasons for the layoffs was financial, and the administration promised that they would not close the Diabetes Center and would maintain all the services. As a medical director of the Diabetes Center, I'm afraid with the recent changes, we will not be able to maintain the same level of service because of the above cited concerns. To translate that level of service into human terms, we're talking about subjecting the low-income Spanish-speaking population with diabetes to a loss of 5 years of life, loss of 8 years of sight, and an onset of the kidney disease 6 years earlier than if they had gotten their blood sugar under control. The staff members must be reinstated with full benefits and seniority. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Tina Jagtiani, and I'm the Communications and Health Policy Analyst of Northeast Medical Services, also known as NEMS. NEMS is a private, nonprofit community health center serving the San Francisco Bay Area. NEMS was established in the San Francisco Chinatown North Beach area in 1968 and has been providing comprehensive, quality, affordable, and compassionate healthcare services for over 40 years. We operate 10 clinics throughout the Bay Area, including 7 clinics in San Francisco. The majority of our patients are low income with limited English proficiency and face challenges accessing culturally and linguistically competent healthcare. Up until late 2013, the majority of our patients were also uninsured and participated in the city's Healthy San Francisco program for uninsured adults. NEMS serves over 61,000 patients of all ages each year. Of these, 49,000 live in the city and county of San Francisco. This represents nearly 6% of all San Francisco residents. Since 1997, NEMS has partnered with CPMC to provide primary care and hospital services to Medi-Cal managed care patients covered by the San Francisco Health Plan. Over the last 17 years, and especially with the recent changes as part of the Affordable Care Act, NEMS and CPMC are now jointly responsible for the care of over 30,000 Medi-Cal managed care patients in San Francisco, including over 9,000 children under the age of 18. Enrollment has grown by 75% compared to just over a year ago. Another 5,000 patients in the Healthy San Francisco continue to have access to CPMC as well. CPMC provides specialty, emergency, and inpatient hospital care to both Medi-Cal managed care and Healthy San Francisco patients. CPMC also provides world-class care to our patients and has been a great partner to NEMS throughout various collaborations. CPMC provides labor and delivery services to NEMS with over 500 newborn babies each year. Close to 100 of our patients receive free eye surgeries through CPMC and the Lions Club annually. CPMC is helping NEMS eliminate hepatitis B infections by offering free screenings and vaccinations. Last but not least, starting this year, NEMS is partnering with CPMC's Child Development Center in UC Berkeley on a joint venture health program to initiate early pediatric developmental disorder surveillance and treatment. This new program is very unique in its accommodations for both English and Chinese-speaking patients. So in closing, CPMC has been a great neighbor and friend to our low-income, uninsured, and underserved patient population, and we look forward to working with CPMC in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Sarah Krolak, and I am a registered nurse at St. Luke's Hospital, and I'm also a San Francisco resident. As a nurse, I'm very concerned about the 1,500 Tenderloin residents getting the health care promised to them. Right now, we know of the great need in the Tenderloin, particularly when it comes to specialty care that neighborhood clinics can't provide and often don't have access to. We need the city to step up to work proactively to ensure that the 1,500 Tenderloin residents benefit from the DA. They need to develop and publicize a backup plan, consult with Tenderloin residents and service providers, and explore modifications to the DA to provide alternate paths or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kim Tavalloni, National Union of Healthcare Workers. My dad said a long time ago, don't ever play three-card Monte with a cheat. Sutter Health is a cheat. When the development agreement was signed, it was assumed that all services would remain the same and that they would do the agreements in the development agreement over and beyond what they were doing. What Sutter CPMC and what the community has come out today to talk to you about is that they have repeatedly taken away their baseline services like the SNF, like the Diabetes Center, like the recent cuts at Davies regarding AIDS care. They're cutting those and then doing the development agreement instead. That is not acceptable. That is like playing three-card Monte on a corner in New York City. You're going to get ripped off. The community is getting ripped off. What they're providing for health care is not acceptable. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And today you have an obligation to the members of the community to say that they're not in compliance. They're not doing something as simple as the Clipper cards. You know, today the mayor announced that his biggest concern was transportation. Well, this is in the DA. You have the power to make them enforce it. That is what you are charged with today. And we are urging you to say that they're not in compliance. Because if they take away their base services, which they are doing in healthcare, and doing the DA instead, they're not fulfilling their obligation. The spirit of the development agreement is horribly broken. And we are urging you to say no compliance today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment?
Good morning.
My name is Pam Dannenberg. I'm with SF Cares, which is a nonprofit group representing St. Paulus Lutheran Church, Night Ministry, Welcome, and other community members. I'm an RN, and I worked at St. Luke's for a period of time. I'm also an occupational health nurse, and I live in the neighborhood of St. Luke's, and I go to the doctors there. This is a really good hospital, and I see Sutter stripping it of many services. They started with the psych unit. That's one of the psych unit was one of the casualties. Now they're after the SNF beds. They're after this wonderful diabetic center. The diabetic center is a flagship program. It has won awards. It has saved millions of dollars in preventing diabetes and gestational diabetes and in treating. And if you look at the neighborhood and you say, where are people obese? Where are these types of needs? It's very much in the mission and in that area. It would be a shame to not have this diabetic center fully staffed with the translators that are needed for that particular population. All I see is that Sutter is very greedy. I would ask you to please think about what I'm saying and think about what this means to the city. If you don't prevent diabetes and you don't prevent gestational diabetes and you don't treat things early, you're going to have a whole bunch more dollars that you'll have to spend. And if Sutter doesn't pay for it, the city's going to pay for it. I know each hospital should be doing their fair share of charity. I believe that the board here and the city supervisors can make that happen. I am also involved with POC, and we're trying to hold people accountable. But that's what this is about today, holding people accountable, making them follow the spirit that development agreement was signed in, and I would urge you to hold them accountable. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Calvin Mulch, San Francisco Information Clearinghouse, a member organization of the Community Coalition. I just want to review a couple of points and then make a request. One is that this coalition of coalitions has been around this issue for over 7 years and has struggled to address in the broadest way the impact and potential of this extraordinary development. Many of you may believe that high tech is the biggest employer in San Francisco and is the most important element in our economy. You would be wrong. It is healthcare and it is hospitals. And this particular development offers an opportunity, as you see by the nature of the development agreement, which we take some responsibility and pride in saying we helped devise, addresses the major concerns of community groups and labor, organized labor. This is a coalition of community and labor. And we are the folks who put on the table an innovative program to hire permanent employees. We are the people who put on the table mitigation around transit and traffic impacts in the most extraordinarily dense transit corridor, Geary and Van Ness, one can imagine. We're the folks who argued for the continued existence, and I think won in a significant way, of St. Luke's, not the 90-bed abomination that would fail, but at least a 120-bed facility that had some ability to exist rationally in the healthcare economy. So we take some real pride in that, and we ask to be part of the development agreement process through a collateral agreement. And in the wisdom of your department and in the wisdom of the city and county, no such development agreement, no such collateral agreement was made with a community coalition, in part because the city attorney argued, well, we don't do deals with people who will litigate. We're not interested in litigation. We're interested in making this project work. And I just simply want to remind you that there is an ability to still do a collateral agreement with this coalition to augment your staff's ability to make sure that this works for all. I think you ought to consider a collateral agreement around around CPMC's development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. We'll open it to commissioner comments, but first I want to thank the Health Commission for making time to be here today and thank all the members of the city staff that spoke, the public that came out, and CPMC. Commissioner Antonini.
Thank you all for a very good presentation and lots of interesting comments. I think one of the areas, there are some areas where there's concern, and a lot has to do with the partial year beginning the process and the fact that, the agreement apparently was not finalized till November 2013. On the paperwork I have here, it was effective of August 10th of 2013, but finally granted on November 8th, 2013. But whenever you're starting something out, there are going to be some problems. But my understanding is the entry-level jobs move forward to the next year, so the shortfall must be met. You have a goal of a certain number of entry-level jobs that you have to do over a period of time, but you may not necessarily be on track the first year, but you have to catch up in this year, and I've heard from some of the staff that they feel that they already have done that or they're close to doing that. So I think that's important to us to look for. Next year's report, certainly we want to see that this one is on target and make sure we do more things in trying to enlist people to fill these jobs. Along some other comments that were made, we cannot ask an employer to hire or retain a particular employee. This is still a decision between the employer and the employee. They have a goal to meet. It's a collective goal, and that, is what has to be done, but the individual hiring decisions still remain with the employer as to who they want to hire among the people, the group of which needs to be hired to fill the goal. And then there was some comment about the fact that the projected number of jobs ended up being higher than the actual number of jobs that came to be during this first period of time. Again, a very difficult thing to do, to try to project a particular job category within a short period of time. And it ended up that there were fewer total jobs, and of course there were fewer required entry-level jobs that are to be given to our target audience. So hopefully both categories will rise in the future. Now, a question for maybe Mr. Rich, I'm not sure, the Clipper card issue. Now, it's been brought up that the DA actually has a period of 2 to 5 years for this. Is that the actual language, or what is the language surrounding this Clipper card situation?
Sure. So the development agreement, as it relates to Clipper cards, is referring the TDM plan, the Transportation Demand Management Plan, that was approved as a condition of approval for the entitlements. The TDM plan very clearly breaks transportation demand management improvements into 3 categories: 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 years plus. The Clipper card is very, very clearly in the 2 to 5 year time frame. So in our opinion, there's absolutely no question about the applicability of the Clipper card. And in fact, the TDM plan itself clearly identifies that this is really about dealing with effects caused by new construction. So we have no doubt that the 2 to 5 year time frame is the appropriate time frame for the Clipper card.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it sounds like criticism before it's time, before the game has begun. But anyway, I would suggest that on this issue, that since part of it, I understand, is a requirement that the employees have a Clipper card, if I'm not mistaken. So whenever that becomes effective, then the hospital should also pay for the whatever the percentage is of 50% of the card, not to force them to get a card and then on their own and then pay for it at a later time. It would seem to me it would be nice if there was a date certain on that issue, because then there'd be less discussion in the future, and if we could come up with something in the 2 to 5 range, hopefully closer to the 2, if that's possible, at which time the employees would be both obliged to have cards, but also would the CPMC would be obliged to pay their percentage at the same time. That seems like the solution in my mind for that one. And then on the St. Luke's situation, there is a lot of comment about people being taken other places to have care. That is perfectly reasonable because I'm a member of Kaiser, and if I want to get, for radiation, I had to go to South San Francisco for 6 weeks every morning to have radiation. If I had neurological problem, I have to go to Redwood City. If I had elected to have a certain type of prostate procedure, I would have had to go to Sacramento. So, it only follows that a large hospital, particularly all within the same city, will do services in various campuses where it's most efficient. However, if they are transporting them away from some site to another site, they shouldn't have to pay for ambulance rides if that is the case. That was just conjecture. I'm not sure if that's true, but certainly it's the responsibility of the facility. If the patient has presented for treatment at a certain place and is being sent somewhere else by ambulance, then that would be something. If it's something that's arranged ahead of time and they're asked to go to a different facility about 2 miles away, then that certainly is something that is understandable. And then I guess there's a shortfall on the Medi-Cal patients that has to be reached, and we know that's a goal. I mean, especially on a short period of time, it may be difficult because there was this projection of this huge number of Medi-Cal patients we would have as a result of the national health, and it may not end up being as many as had been predicted. And even if there are a lot more people eligible for that under the higher income level that the state still is obliged to provide Medi-Cal, you can't always force somebody to seek medical care. As a dentist, I know that a large number of people, even if services are free or completely paid for, don't want to avail themselves of services. So I'm not saying this is the reason for that shortfall, but it's a difficult thing, and maybe one of the things we have to do is more outreach to the target audience to make sure they realize the need to avail themselves of the services and how important it is. And so those are some of the main things. I would speak against, it was collateral agreement. We've been down that road already. I mean, I think that is not something as we've been advised to do as a city, and we have to work between the parties involved in the future. And, the other final thing I had to say is we really need to find a partner in the Tenderloin to deal with this particular problem. What I'm hearing is you need a nonprofit or some kind of facility that is in existence or can be existent in the Tenderloin, where there is no Cal Pacific facility in the Tenderloin as yet because the hospital's only under construction, but there has to be some intermediary that the city can find that would work to refer them to services at Cal Pacific or to provide services on site where this particular nonprofit is exists. So that would be the things I see. But I think on the whole I agree that Cal Pacific is in compliance. I see there are some areas that need some work, and certainly I would encourage you to work on these areas, also to address the concerns about possible language barriers within the diabetes clinic at St. Luke's, and make sure that there is interpretive services there to make sure any of the patients are able to communicate, their needs are communicated to them. Thank you.
Commissioner Chung.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your presentations, and thank you for all the city staff for giving us a glimpse of what has been going on. And there are a few different things that comes to my mind, and I thought I wouldn't have a whole lot of questions because number one, this is a relatively new process to me. I wasn't involved with the initial part of this agreement, and also I can't sit here and tell a hospital how to run their business. But with that said, after all the presentations, a lot more questions came up that I didn't think I have. And it's really more about not so much how compliances work in this case, but it's more about, like the intention behind the agreement. And and that's the questions I have here, and I'm not sure we have a answer for that, or anyone have a specific answer to that. Number one, it sounds like, it's about economic equity to, like certain communities, certain neighborhood, and certain, populations that we want to make sure that they don't get left in the cold, like when everything else seems to be blooming in this country. I heard about, like a lot of investment in tech businesses, but also at the same time, I'm just curious why, like entry-level positions could be that hard to fill. And this question's come up a lot for me because I initially started Rhonda knows, I started the Transgender Economic Empowerment Initiative in the city that's supported by, the entire City Hall family. And but when I go back and look at the list of employers that participated in LGBT job fair, I don't see CPMC on there. So, and I know that Jewish Vocational Services has been a partner, like with the LGBT Centers on Workforce Development, and I'm just curious, the outreach work effort that we were talking about, like how much of that actually have been discussed with other organizations and parties that also have that focus. I'm not expecting a perfect job, tomorrow, but I think that, there are definitely different pockets and pressure points that we can address and to make it better. And like we have a reason to have the San Francisco Health Improvement Plan. We have the reason for the Community Health Improvement Plan, and we have a reason for the Community Health Master Plan. It's really to look at the gaps of the city. Not just specific hospitals, how many beds here, how many beds there, but is to make sure that every single person that live and work in this city can get the same type of quality services no matter where they go, no matter which hospital they access. And that's the part that I'm not very clear either. It's, with the new beds in St. Luke's, what type of services will St. Luke's be providing, and how is that going to meet, like some of the unmet needs that we currently have in the city, and how is it going to fill the gaps that we've identified through the health improvement plan and through the master plan. And I can't tell you how to hire people, but it's a little bit concerning to hear that some bilingual staffs are let go, and that the questions becomes, like what is it like, for a patient to navigate through the systems? I totally understand that, sometimes you have to have specialty, services in one hospital, and because ultimately we want everybody to get the best care. I live in Excelsior. I think I've said that before multiple times that my late grandfather, benefited from St. Luke's because that's the hospital that he actually went to when any medical emergency came up. The last time he was transported to San Francisco General because they had a better treatment for people who experience strokes. And because of that, my grandfather could spend 6 additional months with us. And I think that that's really important, and those are the key factors that I'm curious about, is, as a continuum of care, not just as one body or, versus in other, businesses, but as a continuum care of a person living in San Francisco, how would I be taken care of? Because my understanding is if I have insurance, I can go to any of the hospitals, that's separate from, my primary care. So, that part shouldn't be any consideration at all. But to really educate our residents about what they're entitled to, what kind of services they can actually access, and to improve their health literacy so they can be a partnership in this. And that's the part that I think is still missing for me. And, and then 2 other things here, that I've written down was the reason for all these was really about good faith. Good faith is about trust. And I think that can be solved, and I think that I really comment on the health department staff and to really work with, CPMC, to really work with, community groups to look at how we can mitigate some of the concerns. I'm not hearing enough about how we hold ourselves accountable in this whole process. I appreciate people, spoke prior to about where we think CPMC is in compliance and where they're not. But also, it's not just a job for CPMC, it's a job for all of us. Mm-hmm. So I think that, it's also time for the master plan, to be revised. And I think that this is good opportunities to come in and do some work, before we, we have a further discussion. So I can't speak to whether they're really in compliance or not because as a health commissioners, I don't think that we have that kind of jurisdictions to make any of that recommendations or, demand binding. But I think that I am looking forward to next year, when we come back for this hearing, that, you at least know what are some of the things that I'll be looking for here. We are not just San Francisco that has these number of hospitals. We have been on the cutting edge. We have been leading the way in healthcare reform and really have breakthroughs in how to treat patients in this city. And I think that that's something we should all be proud of. And I have no doubt CPMC wants to be one of the partners that lead that way. So how that happens, I think that's the conversations that we need to continue to have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore.
It's actually Commissioner Richards.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Great. I have a lot here, and I'll try to get through it pretty quickly. CPMC is a community trust organization in my mind. It's an asset to the city. I certainly echo Supervisor Campos' sentiments on bringing everybody together here. I was a part of, 2007, 2008 with the medical office building at Davies, all the contentious issues way up there. I'm a consumer of CPMC. I use Davies all the time. My doctor is a resident at Davies, and, I love Davies. I love CPMC. I think that all being said, I kind of reflect on what I'm hearing here, and I reflect through my private industry lens, and I say, look, I've cumulatively managed billions of dollars over my career, and I've always been a subject of audits, and this is more or less an audit. Facts are facts, and you can't really get around the facts. I think there are some facts here that, really can't be in dispute. I mean, Ms. Waddy, you said the TDM clearly said 2 to 5 years is 2 to 5 years. We clearly heard that there are fewer jobs projected or delivered than were projected. We clearly heard there were 6 people hired. There should have been 14. The facts are the facts. So, I mean, I kind of come back and I kind of say, I look at this thing in its entirety. What is the value of this agreement? How many tens of millions of dollars are we looking at? And actually, how much are we that way, all the way there? Are we 95%, 97%? Like, we're almost there, right? I mean, some of these items don't seem like they're very big to me. There's a big one in here, and I'll let you know that. I think a couple of thoughts on what I would consider some of the smaller items that I'm not sure why these things are happening, and I'll bring them up. My husband is a nurse. He has nothing to do with CPMC, so I'm allowed to tell you about this. He's a dialysis nurse, and he doesn't speak Chinese or Tagalog, but there are people that need to speak Chinese or Tagalog on staff because they have patients that come in, and if you don't explain how to do dialysis to them in their home in Chinese or Tagalog, they go home and they don't do it right, and they come back with peritonitis, and they have to go into the hospital, and actually they have a negative outcome, and it costs a lot more in the long run in the healthcare system because they don't understand what they're doing. I look at, a diabetes clinic in the Mission, and if you don't speak Spanish in the diabetes clinic, you're kind of like behind the 8 ball. You're not really being able to serve those patients. And I kind of wonder why you would let people go and not have people speak Spanish to a place where diabetes is ground zero. And it's really the mission. We had the soda tax debate. We had all these different things. And this is really where you need people to be able to communicate to the patients. Likewise, in Davies, there are 2 case managers who were there for years who I know the community loves. And I didn't pick up my copy of the Bay Area Reporter this morning, but they also have been let go. And I know there's some issues with whether we think that the new case manager is going to be culturally proficient or culturally competent. And I kind of look and I go, I kind of smell smoke here, and I kind of go, well, there must be some fire behind it. I know you might hide behind the fact that it's a personnel issue, but I'm seeing data points and I'm connecting them and going, looks like a cost-saving issue to me. There's something going on where you're letting people go who really are doing a good job but have been there a long time. So I'm going to hold you accountable to that. I think, I think we need to face facts and give ourselves an honest grade here. If I were in private industry and you were auditing me with this development agreement, I would get some fails or whatever not in compliance, not in compliance. A lot of even compliances here, right? So clearly there's a lot of compliances, but where we're not coming up to speed, we should give ourselves a not in compliance. And just like I would have to do this in private industry, what is my remediation plan? I heard a lot of remediation plans here today. We're doing this, we're doing that, we've given money to job training, we've adjusted how we're sending our clients over, all these different things you're doing. Let's face the facts, be honest with ourselves, tell ourselves what we're doing, put it down in writing. I think you're going to get a lot more public trust out of it. I think you're going to have a lot more people respect the process, and let's move on. I think we're well on our way to making this thing work, and I think I'd respect the process a lot more. I'm almost done. The whole issue around collateral agreement. I don't know. I'm torn on this one. I come from a CAC, Community Advisory Committee background. I was on the Margaret Octavia CAC, and one of the things we demanded was the community has to have some level of oversight because we put these grand plans in place, and this is kind of a grand plan for CPMC. I don't know what the exact level of community involvement has been in how the monitoring is going here. I think there should be some level. Does it rise to a collateral agreement? I don't know. I'll wait to hear what my other commissioners think. But I think that should be on the table, at least for discussion. And I think lastly, to sum this all up, are we in compliance or not in compliance? I don't know. And the reason is there's no formula for me to say if we get 8 out of 10, that's a pass. If we get 94 out of 100, that's a pass. There's no formula for me to really judge this by. The one that really bothers me is the tenderloin health issues. That's the most serious one. And if you had to put a gun to my head and said, if you were in private industry, Mr. Richards, and we're going to audit you, and if you're not up to stuff, and we're going to have to refer you to the Board of Directors Audit Committee because you failed on one item, it would be that one. So if I had to score myself on this, I'd say we're not in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pading.
Thank you very much, President Yu and President Chow. I want to thank Sutter and CPMC for its investment in health in San Francisco and in jobs. It's no small adventure what you're doing in terms of bringing these resources that are very essential to our community here. That said, I have an issue with 3 matters that were brought up that I would like to address regarding particularly serving the unserved communities in the Tenderloin, the Medi-Cal issues of the shortfall, and also the St. Luke's Dialysis Center. For me, this is sort of a health equity concern, and I'm not clear whether there are 3 problems or they're 1 problem. I mean, there's a strain for them that these are issues around underserved care. And I'm not really sure whether we've heard the why. For example, there might be a difficulty arranging we know why there's a difficulty arranging services with the Medi-Cal, the MSO in the Tenderloin. There is currently not one. I'm not sure we heard why there's a shortfall in the Medi-Cal outreach and charitable care services. And I definitely did not hear why there might have been a staffing difference and how you might meet the future needs of the monolingual patients serving diabetes care at St. Luke's. So for me, again, I'm a lumper rather than a splitter. I'd be interested in hearing the reasons why from PMC these decisions might have been made, and particularly not only the why, but what's the issue that in terms of how you might resolve this. In terms of resolving this, I know that there's been conversations with our Department of Public Health, and I think there's plans around each of these issues. My concern, though, is that with each of these, there's also health equity burdens that we have. These are underserved communities. And when serving underserved communities, it's my belief that we need to not only call out the issue, but we need to actually go beyond and do an extra effort. So, for example, the Tenderloin MSO issue, I think we could wait perhaps a long time before an MSO comes into being. But what if it doesn't? What would we do to meet the good faith effort of providing services in the Tenderloin if it doesn't? And how can CPMC maybe make that proactive effort to be involved? Same thing with the Medi-Cal shortfall. Again, I'd like to know why and how we could more proactively solve that. And then lastly, with regards to the Diabetes Center, my understanding would be that it probably wouldn't be till we have a set of patient complaints of lack of services or delay in services that the issue might come forward. And so before that happens, again, we'd really encourage or ask CPMC to do the good work that you've known to be doing in the community, to take a proactive stance in doing the extra effort to address the reasons why, find out what they are, do a drill down, and then perhaps come forward at the next time with plans to share with us. This is what we think is the issue, this is what we're going to do, and get ahead of the curve and not have to necessarily follow behind the ball. That said, I'm very happy that our staff is recommending in terms of compliance, but I just want to make sure that there is also good faith effort to meet the spirit of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes, Madam Chair. I would just like to, again, thank everybody for coming out this morning and sharing with us your dialogue and concerns and pertaining to this unique collaboration, which has now been underway and which has some unique challenges, which were brought out by our staff and also emphasized and highlighted by a number of you representing various parts of the challenge here. I guess there's some things I just want to reflect on. There was mentioned the fact that, and again, the health industry is the largest industry in San Francisco. That's a given. That's taking a look at not only the building of hospitals, the retrofitting of hospitals, but the quality of care in patients that are brought in from all over the world, including training programs, et cetera, et cetera. But, competition among the various campuses, whether it be CPMC, whether it be, quote, the Old Catholic Hospital West or Kaiser or UCSF, one of the major things that was brought in many, many years ago was sort of an incentive to have our staff, our postdocs, our medical students, our health science students at UCSF use the old BART ways or shuttles, anything to not impact the campuses with cars, et cetera, et cetera. And so these reimbursement issues were generated 15, 20 years ago, and it was just part of the culture of many of these institutions. Same time, we couldn't offer, as UCSF, where I spent 37 years on faculty, we could not offer housing allowances, et cetera, or fixed tax vacations like you could at Kaiser or CPMC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying is it's something that I think shouldn't even be on the radar at this point. I think it should just be a given, and then let's move forward on it. The part that really, is still and again, it's been highlighted again, how do we have still 1,500 human beings living in a critical part of the city that has been at risk for many, 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 many years? The fact in our department, the health department, and the presentation I thought was excellent, we need to find a way. There was an effort because of this intervention to have 8 nonprofits work together to see if in fact they could develop a comprehensive program to provide services. At the same time, we've heard from NIM saying that they've been working with CPMC and doing a great many things, including collaboration now with Berkeley Public Health, et cetera, et cetera. I think we need more discussion and dialogue on how, in fact, are we going to collaborate to ensure that our people are served within this community. I mean, it's astounding. Just think about it. We have GLIDE. Glide has UCSF School of Nursing running its nurse practitioner programs. We have the Frank Curry Clinic. Dr. Frank Curry was our Director of Public Health for many, many years, taught at UCSF, and made a commitment to provide and open up services in the Tenderloin. And here we are, still not done. It seems to me that CPMC has a unique challenge and great opportunity to really work in order to ensure that the comprehensive services are provided for this unique community. Shifting now over to the mission, St. Luke's. My gosh, we had our chair of our commission and others. We had Dr. Sandra Hernandez at that time serving on, and our supervisors serving on a joint committee to work on the St. Luke's issue. And it was a very, very positive program. And we talked about outcomes and quality care and what, in fact, would be provided. You know, the fact of the matter is the mission is still viewed as a Latino community, even though there have been shifts, etc. You talk about on certain holidays, whether it be Our Lady of Guadalupe coming up, whatever, there'll be 1,500 families marching from different churches all over the city, coming in right down Mission Street up 24th, and they'll have a celebration walk to Mission Dolores. They'll go right by St. Luke's. St. Luke's has always been a critical part of services for the Latino community. And this goes back since its founding. I mean, St. Luke's had a fantastic school of nursing, which was no longer operational. They also were one of the first units to develop a family practice program along with San Francisco General and UCSF. You know, and a number of these services, including the diabetes, other units, have been used as, quote, the flagships of clinical excellence, showing training, competency, measured outcomes. I mean, to sort of eliminate, you know, this as we're going to rebuild and continue to build St. Luke's, when in fact this is now being navigated as a Latino cultural center, is something you really need to think about. I mean, I think this is a very important area you need to think about pertaining to how are we going to provide services in a continuum that we've done for years and years and years. These are something we'll be discussing at the Health Commission pertaining to quality care, outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. All I'm saying is I really think, yeah, we're not voting on anything today. I was informed before we came. But I really think this was a fantastic opportunity to listen and say, it reminds me of the old Navy saying, we stand with pride and we view with alarm. We have a few challenges we're going to work on, and we're going to navigate them to make sure that patients and San Franciscans and quality care is a flagship of excellence pertaining to this collaboration that has been underway. And we have a lot of catching up to do in some areas, but I really believe we could do it. We had some reservations when we were building Laguna High at SF General pertaining to particularly the workforce. And yet we'll see that we've excelled in reference to all those areas we were asked to comply with. We've almost doubled it. But a lot of it comes in stages because a hospital isn't built in 1 year. It takes, as we heard today, there was sand there instead of rock. Well, that adds to the thing, and then you need certain specialties, certain jobs that have to be trained, retrained. We used to have arc welding here at the community, at Samuel Gompers High School years ago, which is no longer operational. Now it's going to go, hopefully, to the community college. So what we're saying is all these things, you know, are in increments, but it takes a collaborative and a community to really provide these excellent services. So at this point, I'll just say that I feel that we made some major headway. I think we're all in it together. I think we're all communicating. And I really look forward to next year's report. I think there could really be some significant positive outcomes. But it's going to take unique work. I mean, deep down, I wish that the St. Luke's campus could have been the old Sears Roebuck, area, which was a fantastic place, and we could have really, but that didn't happen. So we'll work and we'll provide, what is second best, and that is this particular protocol, which we all agreed to, and will provide unique options for our San Franciscans. So again, thank you very much for participating in this discussion today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So to any members of the public who are here for the 12 p.m. Planning Commission hearing, we are still on our 11 a.m. calendar, and the Commission will take a break in between the two meetings, so want to give you a realistic sense of time. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you to the public and thank you to the Health Commission. I believe that the high level of integrity in the discussion of how we are looking at this issue makes me very comfortable to not feel pressured to do a compliance check, but indeed encourage everybody to continue to pick the positive guides which come out of this discussion to take this further and use it as a guide to prepare for a compliance evaluation next year. The more important thing for me is whenever you have people who are so diverse in background and intention to come together and after 1 year work like the winning team, that mostly doesn't happen. And that is not a flip remark I'm making here, but it's a remark about that the objectives of how you measure compliance are, one, there is a value of dollars, and that's fine. You have a bank account and you kind of figure out of how you cover it, but then there is the value of integrity, and then there is the value of social and economic and health equity. And I think it is in exactly that particular different set of values where we're having some major issues. And I would agree with a large number of the Health Commissioner's observations that we have health equity concerns and issues that are resurfacing right out of the heated battles I sat in for I don't know how many years here in this seat as a commissioner. The same issues presented by the same people are resurfacing, and unfortunately, while I would have expected, and that's just me, that there would be a proactive effort to move forward and really shine, because the negotiations were painful enough given the length of time and energy everybody put into this, but that didn't happen. So I'm indeed, on that score, unhappy, but I am also, on the flip side, confident that there is enough common ground and enough stick in the development agreement to see a better or more stellar performance in the next year. Those issues are in the area of proactive attitude towards medical shortfalls in the Tenderloin, the issue with St. Luke, and particularly the diabetes center staffing and provision of health care for culture and linguistic sensitivity. I would not see that there would be a shortage, but an increase of personnel given what we are trying to do, particularly as we are now moving in second and third generations of people of foreign background being born in this country. We should have a large number of applicants who are not only capable of two languages, but are completely bilingual to the level that it indeed is necessary for provision of health care in those very critical areas, particularly mothers and diabetes, etc. I think there's an extra level of sensitivity that goes beyond translating. I myself would refuse to go to a doctor's office where somebody else has to stand by to translate of what my personal issues are. Going to the doctor is complicated enough, so leave alone the other issues. There are the finances and God knows what. I am glad that we do not have to vote compliance, but I am looking for an increased level of sensitivity, and I'm looking towards my colleagues, Mr. Rich and Ms. Wadi, the planning department, etc., to really work more closely on compliance in the issues in between. And again, as always, and I'm sitting here as a English second language person, the accuracy of what we say and what we do when we say that we do and when we do what we say and doing it are extremely important, particularly to get back to my initial point, the number of people which came together to craft this development agreement come of the most diverse backgrounds and the largest number of different objectives of what needed to be done. It is now in the follow-through and by the extra energy that everybody spends to make the next year a more successful reporting period in front of these commissions.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a few questions and then ask Dr. Chow to please give some closing remarks. So on the issue of workforce, I have some questions, I assume for either Ms. Simmons or another member of staff. The specific period that this report covers is the 2013 period, but we received some numbers that came through into 2014. I believe that's correct. So I understand that there's this 2-year rolling period that gives us an ability to find an average, but that we already have the catch-up of the 13 jobs going into 2015. But what I want to understand is, are there a specific number of jobs from 2013 that we also need to catch up, or I forgot the number, the 13 rolled over, is it, what time period does that cover? I just want to get a sense when we see it next year, what's the 2-year time period that we're looking at, and is there any kind of gap?
I'm going to, because I don't want to misspeak, I'm going to defer to my staff who knows a lot more detail than I do on the specifics.
Okay, thank you.
So the hiring year is actually from the beginning of the DA, so it's 1 year from August 10th. So that is the hiring year. The compliance report that CPMC submits based on the DA is on the calendar year. So what they were reporting was not a full hiring year. What we reported in our city report gave an update through the hiring year, although when we submitted our report, the hiring year was not quite over. But now that the hiring year is over, they are at 6 jobs for that first hiring year. Those 13 jobs are the shortfall from the first hiring year. Those are what have rolled over into this hiring year right now.
So that's very helpful. So we have 10 reports total in this process, right? So every year we'll be hearing about the number of jobs from the hiring year, which is August to August.
Yes.
Okay,
and so to date, just for an update, since the second hiring year has started, through the end of October, we've had 5 additional hires. We don't have all of the numbers reconciled right now, but there were 2 additional hires in November and December, and 5 offers made to residents since the end of October. So we are seeing a positive trend in terms of the number of residents hired into CPMC jobs.
Okay, thank you. I heard a number of concerns today from staff on a number of different topics, and I think it would be helpful, staff, I don't know if you want to, at the end, summarize them, or maybe I'll list a couple that I heard and let me know if you heard more or if I'm overstated any. So clearly the catch-up on the entry-level jobs, I heard a lot about the cultural competency of staff, especially with language and translation interpretation, the Tenderloin Medi-Cal provision, and then also the charity care commitment. All right, so I'll leave my comments there and ask. Oh, I think
actually, right.
Yes. So Commissioner Taylor McGee.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll try and be brief. I just want to thank everyone who testified today, and the public testimony was both instructive and informative, so thank you very much for that. It seems to me that a lot of what I'm hearing, it boils down to a social justice issue. And, given the country's challenges in basically meeting social justice issues, I'd really like to see if there's some way some of this can't be mediated, particularly when we think about jobs and we think about hiring. I mean, that's really important to all communities, and so it just doesn't seem to me that that's something that's so out of whack that we can't fix it. So in light of that, I'd just like to put that on the table, that I'd really like to see us have more thought given to how we meet the goals that we're talking about and do better in a city like San Francisco. And then I'd like to ask, if I can very quickly, the director of OEWD, you mentioned barriers removed. I want to know what those barriers are, whether they're perceived or real.
So for employment, based on what we see, because we now can see what folks are coming in with and why they're not moving up, there's a more reality to it. So, maybe not, when you apply for CPMC, they look at your minimum qualifications, and sort of the next level is I don't want to say preferred, I forget what the acronym is that they use, but to make sure that your resume really brings out all of your experience, is one thing. So how your resume is worded, how you interview, we've gotten a lot more information from CPMC about just how they hire and bring and what they're looking for the positions that we've seen. Making sure that, because it's a process, it's not like you interview and you get an immediate call. There's a couple of steps. So to make sure you're available for all the steps, things like that. But I think I understand and hear what you're saying about the perception and the reality. And we've had discussions with the community, too, about making sure that for lack of a better way of saying it, the blame of why someone isn't hired isn't solely the job seeker's fault, because I think that becomes the perception, and then that becomes folks' reality. But to not make that the reality, but to really talk about skills and experience and compatibility for the position, so it's a win-win for the job seeker and the employer, and to make sure that balance is there. We've done a lot of work, and the funds that are going out from SF Foundation are going to be to support that. And over the last several months, we've sort of done a roadshow in partnership with CPMC to train our community-based organizations on what the employer is looking for, how you want to prepare your clients. And we've done that before. So, for us, that's important. And conversely, CPMC also has received a lot of education around sort of our CBOs and how they prepare clients for opportunities, not just theirs, but broader, the type of training, the type of skill development that we're trying to do. So I feel like we've gotten stronger, but I've heard a lot of comments here around trust and perception and all of that, cultural competency, and obviously that's a big part of the work that we want to do moving forward, and the funds that we have, what we'll focus them on.
Okay, thank you very much. And just one last comment. The California Pacific Medical Center also has a responsibility to make sure that those structural barriers are removed. When we hear from a gentleman who had 3 interviews and no feedback, and you have a community-based organization that's serving the community to ensure that we have people in the community who get the jobs, and they're discouraged, that's a problem.
Yes.
And so we need to fix that.
Yeah, we hear it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Richards.
Just real quickly, those kinds of things that we're talking about happen everywhere. And the company I just came from, we have people that apply and they say, my resume goes into a black hole, they get an interview and it takes forever and they never hear back. So whatever you can do to close that feedback loop, specifically with the candidate on why they didn't get the job, or set that expectation on you should hear within 6 weeks, would really help them and build their confidence level up and help them get that skill set for that next interview if they don't get it. Thanks.
Dr. Chow?
Thank you. Again, on behalf of the Health Commission and the Planning Commission, we thank the public and we thank our staffs, which have produced a report from a very complex DA that I think simplifies sufficiently that we were able to have meaningful dialogue on the key issues that have arisen. I think Commissioner Moore has already spoken and had a great summary on where the issues really lie. And while we have many specific issues that our directors will need to weigh as to whether or not it's compliance or not, and whether it's a C grade or a D or an F or even an A, we have 9 more years to go. And those of us who probably lived, as Commissioner Moore and I and Commissioner Antonini, with over another 9 years of working on this, I think are delighted that, in fact, these structures are going to happen. But as we have been speaking of, and as we are looking for the rights that our citizens and residents should be experiencing under the benefits, the economic benefits related to the development of these projects, I think we did, and I believe that our commissioners were very pleased to hear that we hadn't lost sight of what these projects are for. These projects are not to create jobs only. They're not only to have gleaming structures in neighborhoods. They're really to deliver the care that we then, and I commend my planning colleagues for recognizing that the issues of cultural competency, the issues of the need to reach out and be sure that our indigent and our most needy are going to be cared for is what this project is about. It maintains us definitely as a world-class center. And I've supported that San Francisco is not only a world-class center, but with the addition of the strengthening of CPMC, an even stronger world-class medical center. But we can't ignore, therefore, what this is about. CPMC and Sutter's own motto, we plus you. The you is us. The you is not only Pacific Heights and not only Mission Bay. The you has to be, and that's what we are today focusing on, the you has to be our Tenderloin also, our Mission District, our Chinatown. All of us need to benefit. All of us need to be able to participate. And I think that's what we've all spoken about. In that relationship, and without enumerating the issues certainly that the health department feels are in question and can be strengthened, we have an opportunity, as so many have spoken of here, from Supervisor Campos to Commissioner Moore, to bring this, to continue to bring it together. So that this is not just some sort of grading opportunity, but that we move it to a more proactive type of relationship so that we actually can answer the questions for which these issues were framed. And while they then came out to be more mundane, about 3 million here and a clinic over there, what our bottom line is, as I said before, was how do we deliver that care to all these people? All the way from cultural competency to a process in which we can make sure that those living within the shadow of Van Ness actually feel they can get added care than what they're getting today. We don't have all the solutions, but what I'm going to be asking our department and our director is that we're not going to just simply follow a timeline of a DA, but we're going to go back to where we had a collaboration way back several years ago under the resolution that was created with our institutional master plan, and ask that our department work with and use our resources along with your resources at CPMC and within the rest of the city to try to answer the needs that have been spoken to, so that the next time we come back, we will be celebrating that there is no question. This is an A report card, rather than us trying to decide, did you meet 8 out of 10 simply on compliance? We recognize that the time frame, if we were merely to only look at waiting for a report and then finding the problem, really leaves us years behind. We need to actually work on it today. And so within that, I'm looking forward to our colleagues at CPMC to once again re-engage. During the DA process, we allowed that to happen because it needed to get worked out. But I think it's time that our department, I think you heard from our commissioners, said it's time to step up and make sure that we come to answers and that we will work together to make those answers. So we're going to be looking forward in the next in the coming year, before our next meeting here, to actually get continued reports from our department, and we'll be asking our department how is it that we could help so that we can have, like I say, Class A answers to all these questions in a year from now. So once again, I thank the public. Where are we done?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, certainly, absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and move forward with the director?
Thank you very much. I just
Thank
also
you.
want to add my thanks to everyone who came out and to both commissions today. As you know, Director Garcia and I have the job of preparing a report based on today's hearing to the Board of Supervisors that provides them feedback on whether on the compliance issues with the development agreement. And if I may, I just it appears to me what I heard from both commissions today was that regardless of technically whether they're in compliance with each provision per se in the code, there are several issues that need to be addressed. And I think it's fair to say that we will highlight those in our report to the board. And I think President Wu highlighted, summarized those in my notes. There are 4 key issues that were highlighted today that both commissions mentioned. One is obviously the issue of entry-level jobs. Second is the issue of the cultural competency and linguistically appropriate services, particularly at St. Luke's. And then there's the issue of the overall issue of charity care. And then fourth, the issue of the Tenderloin and how we get at that issue, whether it's through a partnership as with the clinic as proposed in the DA or some other mechanism. So what I would propose is that our letter addresses those 4 issues, and not only addresses that they are issues to be addressed, but as much as we know about how they are to be addressed in the coming year and in the coming reporting period. And we will be happy to work together on that as the 2 departments and get back to you on the results of that in the coming weeks. Thank you.
More.
Your concerns, did your point about St. Luke include the discussion about the structure of the diabetes center? I think I heard the majority of commissioners on both commissions agree that raises a concern.
I believe that was where the issue of cultural competency and linguistically appropriate services was. It was around the diabetes center in St. Luke. So
there
yes.
could be an additional sentence to kind of highlight exactly why that was mentioned. That would help.
Thank you, Director Ram.
Garcia, please.
Yes. I look forward to working with Director Ram. I also want to thank all the commissioners. I worked with many of you during this process. Also the community groups that we've been working with over the many years, along with CPMC. The department, of course, has the development agreement, but we also have a responsibility for overall health in the city. So as an example, recently in our Ebola preparedness and response, we've worked very closely with the hospitals. In fact, we did site visits and made sure they were prepared. So that does not, we are obligated to ensure that when we hear things like diabetes and cultural competency, I think we can work closely with CPMC in a very stronger way to ensure that they are culturally competent. And I don't see why we can't work with them closely in ensuring that. Also, the fact that the MSO issue in the Tenderloin, I think we can solve that. We did try to work very closely with the Clinic Consortium, but there is an MSO within that group, and that's NEMS as an example. And so there is, I think, a possibility of that. We also want to work closely to ensure that the new hospital does provide, and I'm talking about the Cathedral Hill or the Sand Hill, that it does have a structural response to Medi-Cal patients. We believe that that's important. That's why it was in the beginning of our process, and we will continue to work with all of the CPMC to ensure that. So we will quickly start our process again to work with all parties. I think we've put a lot of effort into this, and I still think we have work to do, but I see that we can improve all of those areas, for at least for the development agreement on the health side. So I want to thank all of you again, and thank the community, and thank CPMC for all the work that they've done.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any further comments on our joint session here? Yes, please.
One question. I tried to look for the, the language around the TDM that it says it takes 2 to 5 years to implementation. I couldn't find it. So maybe if there's someone that can send me that, that language on the agreement specifically, that would be really helpful. Because I think that's where some of the disagreement comes from also.
I did have one further comment as we were talking about what elements should be put into the potential letter. I do think that not only is it an issue of diabetes, but because we're talking about, specifically I'm referring to what might be the mix of services at St. Luke's, and certainly not to get into the business plans of the whole CPMC enterprise. It would seem not to be unreasonable to really discuss with the community what parts of services community did need. And I think the diabetes issue is important, but I think it may be only a harbinger of what the underlying issue is, which is how do we also meet the needs of the current residents of the Mission, as well as what would be an expanded need as the city continues to expand. I think that is the underlying concern, whether it be just simply a diabetes clinic or should be the a gestational program or women's program or whatnot. So I think there should be not to subvert a overall master plan, but understanding how one meets those community needs at the same time as it meets the larger needs of the World Center that it is building. And I would suggest that that be part of it, along with that cultural competency, again, is not just simply on the issue of diabetes, but that would cross all of the other programs that CPMC has. I know that they have some wonderful programs for that, and that would be another area, as Director Garcia had pointed out, that once again the Health Commission does have that responsibility to see that we are giving or getting the best health for our residents. And so looking beyond just the St. Luke's issue, and we've had issues, again, on renal care and so forth, I think how we deliver that care, is there a better way beyond just the translator that you call by phone? Because that meets the minimum, gets you the C, but isn't it better that we have somebody who can be culturally competent and deliver that care right away without the intervention of somebody? Are those possible things? Because this is going to be a wonderful system that you set up, and we need to have, we're trying to do the very same thing within our own city structure. We'd like to see that the other hospital systems would also be looking at a better way than just meeting minimal requirements for cultural competency. So I would hope that those would be part of the emphasis within our letter that is being developed by the directors. So, sorry that I took them all that time. So we're back to a motion, therefore, for adjournment is in order. Yeah. Good. Is there a say? I think we could probably take it jointly. Yes. Okay. With the president's permission over here, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, this joint meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And for the benefit of the public, the Commission's regular hearing scheduled for noon will begin at 1:15.